If you're making a pasta sauce and you decide to, throw in an extra handful of garlic or like a splash of wine, you're considered a creative chef.
Yeah, it's improvisational.
Exactly, it's jazz. But if you are making a cake and you decide to just throw in an extra cup of flour,
Oh, no.
just because you're feeling inspired,
Yeah, that's not going to work.
no, you haven't been creative. You've just engineered a complete structural disaster.
You really have. It is a completely different paradigm.
Yeah.
You cross this line from art into rigid, unforgiving chemistry the second you decide to bake something.
And that sharp divide is exactly what we are getting into today. So welcome to this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Today, we are extracting the core insights from a foundational piece of source material. It's Unit 1 on the fundamentals and principles of the baking craft.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission here isn't just to, read a list of recipes or tell you how to make a standard cookie.
Right. There are plenty of places for that.
Exactly. We are looking at the underlying physics, the hidden skill sets, and the really precise mechanical language of baking.
Yeah.
Because to really understand this craft, you have to understand that baking isn't just a method of cooking. It is an exercise in microscopic engineering.
That is the perfect way to frame it.
Really.
And the source material starts by defining exactly what baking is at its core.
Right.
And it really hinges on one specific phrase. Baking is defined as a dry heat cooking method where food is cooked in an enclosed environment,
Okay.
such as an oven.
An enclosed environment.
Yes,
Yeah.
that enclosed environment is the engine of the entire process.
Well, and everyone knows what an oven is, obviously.
Sure.
But when you stop to really think about the thermodynamics of it, it's completely different from almost any other way we cook.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you're pan frying a piece of chicken,
Right.
the heat is purely directional.
It's just coming from the bottom.
Yeah, it's conduction. The heat hits the bottom and you have to physically intervene.
Right.
You have to flip the food to cook the other side.
But an oven functions as a completely controlled climate chamber.
That climate chamber, yeah.
You aren't just applying heat to a surface, you are altering the entire atmosphere around the food.
Wow.
The heat surrounds the dough or the batter from 360 degrees, simultaneously.
Right.
It is convective and radiant heat working together to cook the item perfectly evenly from the outside in.
And that 360-degree heat is what triggers all these simultaneous chemical reactions, right?
Exactly.
It's what it forces the food to rise, forces the proteins to set, and creates that final texture.
Yes.
Which is exactly why the golden rule of baking is, don't open the oven door every 3 minutes to look at your cake.
Oh, it's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, you break the climate
You
chamber.
let all the heat out.
You vent out that carefully accumulated dry heat, the ambient temperature crashes, and the evenness of that whole environment is just destroyed.
Wow.
And if the structure of your cake hasn't permanently set yet,
Oh, I know what happens.
yeah, the sudden drop in temperature causes the entire thing to just collapse on itself.
You ruin the physics of the bake.
You do. You literally break the physics.
But when you actually respect the physics of that enclosed environment, the sheer spectrum of what you can produce is staggering.
Mm-hmm.
The text lists out the primary examples of what this dry heat method yields. So we have cakes,
Right.
bread, cookies, pastries, rolls, biscuits, and pizza dough.
And just think about the textural difference there
Yeah.
between an incredibly delicate, flaky pastry that just shatters when you bite into it
Oh, yeah. So good.
and a dense, chewy piece of dough that you literally have to tear with your teeth.
Right.
They are wildly different foods, yet they are both born from the exact same fundamental mechanism.
Manipulating ingredients so they react to dry heat in an enclosed environment.
Exactly. That's all it is.
So the oven is literally transforming these raw, wet ingredients into complex structures. But what I find truly fascinating in our source material is the argument that the process of baking transforms the baker just as much as the ingredients.
I love this part of the text.
Yeah, it outlines the importance of baking, and it moves way beyond the kitchen.
It does.
It frames baking as a developmental tool.
It lists 6 specific benefits that essentially argue that mastering the chemistry of the oven builds fundamental life and business skills.
And I actually want to dig into the first 2 points it makes, because at first glance, they seem to completely contradict each other.
Right.
The text claims that baking develops creativity, but right next to that, It claims it builds precision and accuracy.
Yes.
Now, how does that work?
Well,
Because we just established that baking is strict, unforgiving chemistry. If you have to measure everything to the exact gram, where is the room for creativity?
it is the ultimate paradox of the craft.
Okay.
And honestly, it's where a lot of highly skilled savory chefs actually stumble when they try to bake.
Oh, because they're used to just tossing things in.
Exactly. They want to improvise. But the source captures this duality perfectly because it recognizes that precision and creativity in baking happen in distinct phases.
Distinct phases.
All right. The structural foundation, so the ratio of flour to hydration to leavening agents,
Right.
that is the science. That demands absolute rigid precision. You cannot guess the chemistry.
No.
But once you have mastered that precise foundation, it earns you the right to be creative.
So the structure is the science and the flavor is the art.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You have to be accurate to get the cake to rise and hold its shape.
Yeah.
But what you infuse into that cake, the extracts, the spices, the intricate designs, the way you braid a loaf of bread, the fillings you invent, all of that is pure creativity.
Yeah.
But the creativity collapses if the underlying math is wrong.
That makes total sense. You can't paint a masterpiece if your canvas is literally disintegrating while you paint.
Exactly.
And that level of discipline obviously bleeds into the professional world, too. The text notes that baking provides career and business opportunities and encourages teamwork.
If you've ever had the chance to observe a commercial bakery operating at 3 in the morning.
I haven't, but I can imagine.
Oh, you see those 2 points? In vivid detail. It is a massive economic driver, yes, but the teamwork aspect is on another level entirely.
Yeah.
It is industrial synchronization.
Wow.
Because baking is so time-sensitive, doughs are rising, ovens are preheating, you have teams of people who have to coordinate mixing, proofing, baking, and cooling hundreds of items simultaneously.
Oh, man.
If one person falls behind on their station, the entire biological clock of the bakery gets thrown off.
The biological clock. That's a great way to put it. And that feels intimately connected to the next point on the list, which is that baking increases hygiene awareness.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I have to imagine that in an environment relying on biological timers and exact chemistry, hygiene isn't just about making sure the floor is mopped.
No, it's not.
It's about microbial warfare.
It is literal microbial warfare. When you are dealing with wild yeasts, ferments, and doughs that need to sit in warm environments to rise,
Yeah.
you are essentially creating the perfect breeding ground for bacteria.
Oh, right.
Cleanliness in a bakery is a strict requirement of the chemistry. Introducing stray bacteria from a dirty mixing bowl or unwashed hands can introduce competing microbes that will literally eat the sugars before your yeast can.
Wow, they steal the food.
They do,
Yeah.
and that completely ruins the product. Precision in your measurements demands precision in your sanitation.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, out of all these benefits, the final point of importance the text gives us is the one that really blew my mind from a historical perspective. It simply says baking produces food that stores longer.
Yeah.
Now, in the modern era, with refrigerators and artificial preservatives, we kind of take that for granted.
We really do.
But historically, that dry heat method was essentially one of the most vital survival technologies human beings ever developed.
It was revolutionary.
Yeah.
Think about the fundamental nature of the oven. It uses dry heat. The process of baking aggressively extracts moisture from the surface of the dough, forming a hardened crust.
Okay.
By reducing the water content, early humans were effectively halting the growth of mold and bacteria.
Oh, wow.
They created a food source that could travel across continents, that could sustain armies, and that could last through brutal winters without spoiling the way raw meat or fresh vegetables would.
So when you execute that dry heat method perfectly, you aren't just making a nice loaf of sourdough.
No,
You are participating in an ancient method of food preservation.
you really are.
But to achieve that kind of perfection, to participate in that history, you have to be able to speak the language.
You do. You cannot manipulate the physics of the oven
Oh,
if you don't understand the highly specific terminology of the kitchen.
right.
The source provides a breakdown of 7 essential vocabulary words, the common terminology every baker must know.
And for anyone listening who already bakes, these words are going to sound super familiar. But what the source material really exposes is that these aren't just definitions, they are descriptions of mechanical and chemical reactions.
Exactly.
So let's start with the literal foundation of the craft, gluten and kneading. The text defines gluten as the protein in flour that gives structure.
It is the backbone of almost everything on that baked goods list, especially your breads and pizza doughs.
So the way I visualize it, it's like constructing a skyscraper.
Okay, I like that.
The gluten proteins in a bag of flour are just raw steel beams sitting in a pile on the ground.
Right, they aren't doing anything yet.
Exactly. They have the potential to support a massive building, but sitting there dry, they are completely useless.
Which is exactly why the next term is required.
Yeah.
The source defines kneading as working dough to develop gluten.
Right. So if the gluten is the steel beams, kneading is the active construction crew.
That is a brilliant analogy, because kneading is highly physical, microscopic engineering. When you add water to flour, those gluten proteins are tangled up in microscopic knots. They are weak.
Okay.
By physically working the dough, pushing it, stretching it, folding it over itself repeatedly, you are literally untangling those knots and aligning the proteins into a massive, interconnected, elastic web.
Wow.
You are building the structural grid of the food.
And anyone who has kneaded bread by hand knows that feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
You start with this shaggy, tearing mess, and after 10 minutes of intense physical labor, it transforms into this smooth, springy, resistant ball.
Yeah, it pushes back.
Yeah, you can feel the web forming under your hand.
You are feeling the structural integrity increase. But a tight, dense web of steel isn't very appetizing on its own.
No, it sounds terrible.
It needs volume.
Exactly. A skyscraper needs empty space inside it so people can actually walk around.
Right.
Which brings us to the next vital phase of the process, leavening and proofing. The text defines leavening as rising caused by yeast or baking powder.
These are the engines of inflation. Yeast is a living biological organism, and baking powder is a chemical reactor. But their ultimate job is exactly the same.
Which is?
To produce gases, usually carbon dioxide.
So they are pumping air into the gluten web we just built.
Yes.
But they don't do it instantly, right? Especially when you're dealing with yeast. You can't just throw yeast in and immediately throw it in the oven.
And this is where novice bakers often fail.
Oh, yeah.
Because they misunderstand the next term. The source defines proofing as allowing dough to rise. But the word allowing sounds so passive.
Like you're just watching TV while it happens.
Right. But proofing is not just waiting around.
It's giving biology the time it demands to do its job.
Precisely. Proofing is the active biological phase. You are letting the yeast consume the sugars in the flour and exhale carbon dioxide.
Wow.
That gas gets trapped inside the elastic gluten web you build during kneading, slowly inflating it like thousands of microscopic balloons.
Balloons.
If you rush the proofing stage, you haven't produced enough gas, and you end up baking a dense, heavy brick, regardless of how perfectly you kneaded the dough.
The timing is everything.
It is.
You are inflating the balloons just enough so that when they finally hit that 360-degree dry heat of the oven, the heat instantly cooks the gluten walls around the gas, freezing the structure in place.
Which perfectly segues into our next critical term, preheating.
Preheating, yes.
The text defines this simply as heating the oven before baking. Now, a lot of people treat preheating like a suggestion.
Or just a way to save time later.
Right.
I used to be entirely guilty of this.
Most people are.
You just throw the pan in, turn the oven on, and figure, well, it'll heat up eventually, right?
Yeah.
But based on the thermodynamics we've been talking about, that is a recipe for disaster.
It destroys the fundamental mechanics of the bake.
Why?
Well, think about the proofs dough we just discussed. It is full of delicate gas bubbles trapped in an elastic web.
Right.
If you put that into a cold oven and let the temperature rise slowly, the dough warms up gradually.
Okay.
The yeast actually goes into overdrive as it gets warm, producing gas rapidly. But because there's no intense heat to harden the crust, the structure remains soft.
So the gas just expands until it breaks through the dough and escapes into the oven.
Exactly. The dough deflates before it ever has a chance to set.
Oh, no.
Preheating is not about convenience. It is about thermal shock.
Thermal shock.
Yes. You need the climate chamber to be at maximum capacity the second the food goes in, so that the radiant heat instantly sears the outer layers of the dough, locking those gas bubbles inside permanently.
So it's all about trapping air.
Yes.
And that concept of trapping air takes us to a totally different style of baking. Because we've talked a lot about heavy breads and gluten.
Right.
But what about cakes and cookies? You don't want a tough, chewy web of steel for a cookie.
Definitely not.
You want something incredibly delicate. And that relies on the next term in the source, which is creaming.
Right. The text defines creaming as mixing butter and sugar until light and fluffy.
Now, we've all seen a recipe that tells us to cream butter and sugar.
Oh, yeah.
And usually people just stir them together until they are combined and call it a day.
Right. They just mash it together.
Yeah. But why does the text specifically say until light and fluffy? What is actually happening in the bowl?
This is one of the most fascinating microscopic processes in the kitchen.
Okay.
Creaming is a physical, mechanical form of leavening.
Oh, really?
Yes. When you take solid room temperature butter and you beat it aggressively with granulated sugar, you aren't just mixing them.
Okay.
Sugar crystals are incredibly sharp at a microscopic level.
Oh, I never thought of that.
As you beat them into the fat, those jagged edges literally carve tiny air pockets into the butter.
So you are violently aerating the fat.
Exactly. The mixture turns pale and fluffy because you have successfully trapped millions of microscopic air bubbles inside the butter. When that batter goes into the oven, those specific air pockets are what expand to give your cake or your cookies that delicate melting texture.
Ah.
If you just lazily stir the butter and sugar together until they look mixed, you haven't carved any air pockets.
Which is why you end up with cookies that spread out into dense, flat hockey pucks on the baking sheet.
Yes.
You skip the mechanical engineering phase.
You didn't build the pockets, so there was nothing for the heat to expand.
Okay, so let's say you've done the work. You've spent 10 minutes perfectly creaming your butter and sugar, or you've spent hours proofing your yeast dough, and you have all this precious air trapped inside.
Right.
How do you add the rest of your ingredients without ruining all that hard work?
Very carefully.
That brings us to the final and perhaps most fiercely protected term in the baker's dictionary.
Folding.
Folding. The source defines folding as gently mixing ingredients to maintain air.
Maintain air. That is the entire ballgame right there.
See, this is the part that always stuck out to me. Why do we have a highly specialized word for what is essentially just stirring?
It is not stirring.
If I need to mix chocolate chips into my aerated batter, why can't I just stir them in?
Because stirring is a destructive action.
Destructive.
Yes, think about the physics of a stirring motion. You are dragging a spoon vigorously through a mixture, creating sheer force.
Okay.
If you just spent hours proofing a dough or painstakingly carving microscopic air pockets into your butter with sugar crystals,
Yeah.
a vigorous stirring motion will crush every single one of those pockets. You will pop the bubbles.
You literally deflate your own structural engineering.
Exactly. Folding is a rescue mission for air.
A rescue mission.
It is a highly specific, deliberate motion.
Yeah.
You take your spatula, cut down the center of the batter to the bottom of the bowl, and gently lift the bottom mixture up and over the top.
Oh, I see.
You aren't stirring. You are wrapping the ingredients around the air pockets to protect them.
Or
When a recipe tells you to fold, it is essentially a strict command warning you not to destroy the delicate chemistry you've just built.
it is a masterclass in fragility.
It really is.
And honestly, this entire deep dive has completely reframed how I look at the kitchen.
That's great.
Just looking at this Unit 1 introduction, we've covered an incredible amount of ground.
We have.
We started by redefining the oven not just as a hot box, but as a precise dry heat climate chamber.
Right.
We explored how engaging with that environment builds critical life skills, from understanding the boundary between rigid accuracy and artistic flavor to executing industrial teamwork and strict microbial hygiene.
And we connected all of that to a shared historical legacy, recognizing babying as one of humanity's original preservation tools.
Right. And then we finally decoded the mechanical language required to actually do it.
Yes.
We moved from building microscopic steel webs through kneading gluten to inflating them with yeast during proofing to utilizing thermal shock through preheating. And finally, the delicate art of carving air through creaming and fiercely protecting it through folding.
It really is a synthesis of biology, chemistry, and thermodynamics.
It's amazing.
And looking at all these strict, unforgiving rules, it leaves me with one lingering thought about the sheer scale of human history.
Oh, where does history fit into the chemistry?
Well, think about the immense level of precision required in the definitions we just unpacked.
Okay.
To get a loaf of bread, you have to develop exactly the right gluten structures.
Right.
You have to capture wild yeasts from the air, keep them alive at the right temperature, and give them the exact right amount of time to proof.
Yeah.
You have to maintain the air through careful handling, and you have to blast it with immediate even heat in an enclosed environment.
A lot of steps.
One wrong variable, and the chemistry fails entirely.
It is cascading failure. If the yeast is dead or the oven is cold, the whole thing is ruined.
Exactly. So knowing how incredibly exact this dry heat science is today, with all our digital scales and temperature-controlled ovens,
Right.
imagine the thousands of years of blind trial and error early humans must have gone through.
Oh, man.
Before the invention of commercial yeast, before the concept of thermometers.
That's wild.
Imagine the countless generations of flat, rock-hard breads, the collapsed doughs, the failed ferments they had to endure and eat before they finally perfected this complex, invisible, microscopic science that we take for granted every time we casually turn on our ovens today.
That is wild to think about. We are basically standing on the shoulders of thousands of years of culinary failures every time we bake a successful cookie.
We really are.
Next time I look through the glass on my oven door, that little enclosed climate chamber, I am definitely going to respect the physics and the history just a little bit more.
As you should.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We will see you next time.